Okay. There has to be a very important distinction between bliss as the ground of all experiences, right? As I said earlier, that Sat Chit Ananda is the ground of consciousness. And Ananda is that aspect inseparable from the other two, inseparable from Sat and inseparable from Chit, right? And it's ever present, ever conscious, ever blissful. Consciousness itself is ever present, ever conscious, ever blissful. Once that becomes one's lived reality, then that experience is no longer an experience. It becomes one's lived state. So whatever happens cannot abstract that. It fails to abstract that. So as we're not failing to understand and distinguish between what is considered to be positive or negative on a relative plane of existence, it nevertheless fails to overshadow the nature of bliss itself. It is with that in mind I meant that everything is bliss. And I made the distinction that let's not confuse it with pleasant and unpleasant experience. Do you see? The one who has realized his or her oneness with Brahman does not fail to experience pain and suffering, but it does not abstract one's identity with Satchitananda. Do you see the difference? Some people quote Ramana Maharshi saying that even if 20 million people will die in front of the sage, a jnani, it will not affect what is there as the ground of consciousness of that realized being. But it sounds horrible from a human, let's say, our human perspective, doesn't it? It sounds completely inhumane. Heartless. But let's not make harsh conclusions or kind of immediate conclusions, because what it means, if we understand that the core of our reality is ever blissful, ever conscious, ever present, and whatever happens in this manifestant world is subject of, let's say, certain conditions and conditioning, which opens up another vast theme. But that in itself, no matter how horrible is the experience, and no matter how horrid, devastating as that experience is, it cannot overshadow that which is one's recognized reality and lived reality. It does not mean that one finds bliss, because you see that your question comes, it's not that you find bliss in the experience. No, every experience finds itself coming from that which is one's own reality, and one's own reality is that, Satchitananda. It is a completely different perspective, completely different way of seeing it. Does that make sense to you? Okay, let's look at it again. There is a downright negative experience. We don't need to philosophize about that. As you said, like, murder, rape, whatever, molesting, someone close to us. It's not that we find that experience is blissful. It's no longer blissful or otherwise. That experience is downright heartbreaking, emotionally nerve-wracking, painful even. Yet, for the one who is abiding in that state, that experience fails to overshadow that which is one's reality. Okay, let's say I know that I'm a man, right? My gender is male. I know that. I don't need to think about it twice. In the midst of whatever experience I might have, that question would not be shaken suddenly. I would not suddenly fall out of like, oh, am I, for a moment, you know, I'm grieving. Right. Am I a woman here? Like, do you see what I mean? Yeah. It goes without even being, you know, it goes without saying. Right. It's a realized and recognized reality since I understood, you know, since my manhood, let's say, kicked in. I gave you that example. So for the one who has his or her identity with Godhead as a lived embodied reality, it's the same thing. And that lived embodied reality is not somehow a vacuum. It has quality, flavor to it, and that is Satchitananda. This is what I posed in my conversation to Tony Parson at the Sand in Europe. We had these exchanges, you know, that some people are still, and there are those who welcomed very much my, let's say, questions, and there are those who are very critical, you know, because to me that the platform that the speaker was promoting, that everything, nothing has a purpose, it's purposeless, and it's just as it is. There's no joy, no sorrow in it, and I say not. Excuse me, is there a possibility that there is a room for growth? Because there is bliss. For instance, speaking from direct experience, I had moments when the body was going through cleansing. For instance, I nearly, well, I don't want to dramatize it, but I was having pneumonia, and it was very painful, very painful. Anyone who knows what pneumonia is it's not a pleasant condition. And yet in the ground of that, all these experiences were on the ground of bliss itself. The bliss was there at all times. So let's not separate, let's not have that tainted idea. I'm with you. It is very important, like, yes, the world, like, we live in time of very important ecological questions. We live in time when negativity raging on. Does that mean that all that is imbibed with bliss? Because I'm kind of like taking your question to a next level, right? Not the experience itself is imbibed with bliss, you see? But the quality of everything that is created is imbibed with bliss. So in a way, that gives us a very holistic and a very dear understanding of the world. It makes the world even more precious with that perspective. Everything, the chair, that sofa you're sitting on now, is there, created by consciousness for the sake to embody Ananda, to embody bliss. Does that make sense? Yeah.